that you've seen that, I'm going to give you a more detailed guided look at this Starkiller Base MOC. Now this took me approximately 4 months to build and is based off of Starkiller Base from The Force Awakens. I really liked the design of Starkiller Base in the film. I liked how it was another super weapon, but this time it was an actual planet and the weapon was built into the core of it. So you can see here that I've built a landscape that was seen on the planet. The landscape of the planet was very similar to Hoth, and that is because it is snow. However, the planet that Starkiller Base is on did also have some forests, which you can see in the top right corner. All the landscape here is actually built with panels on their side. However, towards the front and the back there are actual plates used, and also you can see the mountain in the back, which did take me quite a long time to build. And also on the mountain, something to note is on the right, that section is actually built using a stud knot on top technique once again. Also something to note about the construction of this base is a lot of it is built with Duplo under here. However, you can't see it because of the way I've built it. Now we're going to have a closer look at the outposts on Starkiller Base. You can see that this one is near the command centre building. You can see that there's some details towards the back and also a small turret at the front. Now taking a look at the outpost on the right side of the base. This one is a small communications tower which would help to communicate with other parts of Starkiller Base, because to me it's quite clear in the film that there are lots of different areas where there are other buildings on Starkiller Base, because it looks like quite a massive complex that goes underground as well. This is quite a simple build, however there are some computers on the back and there is also a security camera attached to the tower. To the left of this there is also another small mountain, which I just added in because I had quite a lot of rock pieces left. Now on the top of the mountain is the final outpost area. You can see here there is the main turret, which is probably used for taking out X-Wings and attacking fighters. This turret here also does swivel all the way around, and I am very happy with this build. There is also some power generators and another satellite tower, which would help once again to communicate to other parts of the base. I'm also very happy with the stairway that leads down off of the roof of the hangar to this area. You can see that it's got these nice handlebars on it, which I'm very happy with. Now I want to take a look at the forest area. You can see that it actually isn't that big, and that's because I didn't really want to make it too spread out. I wanted to make it quite dense, but I think I've made it look like it will continue out past where it is currently if I built more of the base. You can also see lots of twigs and broken branches on the ground of the forest floor as well. You can also see there is some snow on the top of the trees, just so it doesn't look like the trees are in some non-snowy area. Moving down, you can now see the other main turret on Starkiller Base. This would probably be used for a different function to the other one. Now, you may think it's not very consistent having two different turrets, but in the film I did notice that there was quite a lot of different turrets being utilised on Starkiller Base. I am also very happy with this design, and I used quite a lot of the pieces from the First Order battle packs to build this one. You can see there is a control centre at the front. This probably wouldn't be used all the time, but would maybe be used to override if something went wrong. Moving down, you can now see the trench area, which does end and then continue into a platform above the snow, which would maybe contain some reactors inside and some things that create the energy for the base. You can see that there are two bridges that go across the trench, which were seen in the film, and I wanted to include that detail, and you can see some snow on them to make it look realistic once again. Inside the trench, I've tried to make it look as hodgepodge as I possibly can, because it does look like that in the film. So there are lots of pipes running along the floor, running along the walls, and it's not really very finished. It's very industrial, and that's what I was going for. So there are also lots of fans and pipes everywhere. There is also another small turret which is very similar to the one that I showed on the first outpost inside the trench. There is also in the trench an entrance to the hangar, but I'll come back to that area later. Now we are going to take a look at the two main structures that go above ground. Now these are actually two separate structures. They don't connect in any way unless you count the underground part. However, they are extremely close to each other, so it is hard to tell that they are actually not connected. Firstly, let's take a look at the exterior of the hangar. We'll come back to look at the interior of both of these later when we look at the insides. But the exterior of the hangar may look fairly simple from out here, but that's because it's black, so it's hard to tell that there are actually details on it. As I now get closer, you can see that on the front there is some curved shapes to add some detail, and also some ridges on the top to add some extra detail as well, which I'm very happy with. But I did want this building to look like quite a big industrial shape. Now, taking a look at the command centre, it's a bit more of a round shape towards the front, however it is still quite angular. It does have lots of windows so the commanders can see out onto the landscape. You can also see on the side some heating details, which would be very useful on this base because it would be freezing cold outside. The windows are also built with stud not on top techniques, because those windows usually go the upwards direction, however here I've used them on their sides. Also on the top you can see a small flap that may look like some sort of cooling air vent or something like that, but however this is actually a way of getting to the switch which allows you to use the lift. However, I will show that later when I get to the interior. Now, taking a look at the back of the command centre, you can see the glass part which is at the back of the part that holds up the command centre. This allows you to see into the lift shaft, which I will come back to later. You can also see on the left the entrance into the hangar, which is the area we're going to look at now. For better access inside the hangar, the roof can be removed. It is only held on by two studs in the left corner. The first area we're going to look at inside the hangar is the platform. The platform is 4 studs wide and is very long. The railing is made out of ladder pieces put on their side. They are only attached at one end and then are just propped up by other pieces throughout the platform to keep them up. The hangar is fairly small. It only really fits one First Order speeder or TIE fighter. However, you have to imagine that it would expand outwards past where I've built. On the right you can also see some crates and a gun rack. I'm happy with the designs of the gun rack and the 2 different crates. You can also see the entrance to the hangar with a stormtrooper with a custom made shield standing in front of it. Also, there are different designs on all the walls to make it look detailed and appear like the Starkiller base seen in the film. On the top part of the wall you can see some nice details and also some lights on the grey parts. And then moving down, there are some slanted walls that are only very slightly slanted with some details on there as well. And then on the wall on the right, it is also detailed with some pipes. Finally, in the hangar, you can see the train track which runs throughout the base. This train takes troops from parts of the base to others because it is a very big base in the film. I will now quickly take a look at the train. Now, from the last update it has actually changed a bit. That was because somebody suggested to me in the comments to cover up the wheels. I thought this was actually an excellent idea, so I decided to sit down and try and incorporate that into this model. However, as you could see, I was not able to do this, and that is because in some areas of the route that the train has to take, it can't fit with any coverings over it. So I just had to leave it as it is. But while I was trying to redo that, I did change some other parts of it just to neaten up some areas and make it look a little bit better. Now, it's still not perfect, but it is now to a point where I'm much more happy with it. The front carriage doesn't actually see any driver at all. It is completely automatic. It does have a battery box in there, and you can actually see one of the wire connectors on the top. Now, I don't think that's too bad that you can see it, but it's maybe be something that would be nice if you couldn't see. The battery box connects to an IR receiver which sends a signal to a remote that looks like this, which I've used on many of my other MOCs, and that allows it to move around the track. On the back you can see the carriage which troopers would stand on to get carried around. There are some seats on the back. You can see I've used some levers, not for levers on this model, but actually for railings for the seats. On the front there is also a small gun rack and a lever to maybe have an emergency stop if something goes wrong. There is also some steps on the side to allow troopers to get on to the train. Now that we've taken a look at the train, we're going to move on to the right, to the entrance to the command centre. The lift is fairly small, however it is electronic, so it does go up and down from the command centre to the underground parts of the base. Beside the lift you can see two slanted walls with details, which I am extremely happy with how they turned out. Now that the minifigures reach the top, how do we get in? Well, once again you can just remove the roof, and it is only held on by one stud here. The back section does not come off just because there is no minifigure interior inside there, it is just the electronics. Not only does that section house electronics for the lift, but also there's some lights. Now they are very ineffective, however I thought there was no harm in adding them. In the command centre there is a bridge that goes through the middle, which is slightly higher up than some of the other areas, and there are some other platforms that are also higher up that wrap around the outside and the bridge that goes through the middle. Now on the parts that aren't on the platform you can see some computer screens and also some men working at them. At the front you can see some large windows which look over the base. There are also lots of other large windows throughout the command centre as well. Now that we've looked at the command centre, we can move down back to the underground section and move to the right. This section is where all the inner workings are kept. This would be things like electricity generators and heaters that would power and heat the base. Also, the train track runs through this section to get to the main underground part, which I will show you next. To access this, you remove this part of the snow, which is once again built with a snot technique. In here you can see many different rooms and walkways. I think I've managed to capture the look of the underground parts of Starkiller Base really well. Firstly, we'll start off over here on the right. This section is the entrance to this part of the base. You can see the train track here where the train stops to drop off troops. Here you can see a mountain wall inside this part of the base. Also, just on the outside of the underground section you can see this fan detail. Moving along, the walkway does continue, but you can also see the stairs up to the upper platforms. Here you can see a bridge which crosses from the interrogation room over to another walkway which leads to Kylo Ren's quarters. Moving along, we now come to this area which is below the platforms. You can see two stormtroopers down there and also a detailed wall. To the left you can see an entrance into the prison room. Moving upwards you can now see another very detailed wall which I am extremely happy with. You can also see a small control panel here, and once again that bridge which leads into the interrogation room. I have tried to make this room as accurate as I possibly can to what was seen in the film. Unfortunately, I did have to sacrifice accuracy in some areas because of space issues. However, I feel like I was able to represent what was seen in the film fairly well. You can see that there are some details around the outside of the room. However, there is the interrogation chair in the centre and also the ashes tray to the side, which does have Kylo Ren's helmet in it. I'm happy with both of these builds and I think they use some good techniques. Now, moving out of the interrogation room, we'll go out of the other entrance, which is to the left at an angle. This then leads on to another platform where on the left you can see a control panel for the prisons, which I will come back to once again later. However, we are going to move right over to Kylo Ren's quarters, which I do realise in the film were on the ship, the Finalizer. However, for this MOC I wanted to include this iconic scene on Starkiller Base. You can see that he does have a window in his quarters that looks over the prison room. However, in his quarters you can see he has a nice chair and also the Darth Vader mask. In the room you can see some pipes and some greebling on the walls. Returning back downstairs, we can look at the final room or space inside the underground section, and that is the prison room. Now, there are only 2 prison cells and they do have glass doors, as you can see. The glass doors do slide open and inside you can see some slightly odd minifigures that don't really fit into the Star Wars theme. Above this you can also see a detailed wall where I've once again used the ladder piece to add some detail. So there it is, Starkiller Base. Now I would just like to take this time to say what I'm going to be building next and what's in the future for my channel. Well, long-time viewers will know that I'm going to be building Thunderbird S next. Now I will not be starting straight away because I want to sort my pieces that were left over from Gotham, which I haven't sorted yet. This hopefully won't take too long. Then once I've built Thunderbird S, what is my next big project going to be that will take up the tables and mean that I'll have to demolish Starkiller Base? Well, I've not decided yet. I've not had anything that's really inspired me to build something else. Hopefully something will come up fairly soon and I'll be able to build something new, but I don't want to really break up Starkiller Base quite yet, so I don't know how long it will be until I build my next big project. But I will have other videos in the meantime coming out, which I hope you enjoy. But for now, I thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you leave a like, comment and also subscribe for more videos. Thank you so much for watching.